Hi everyone, it's Nicole and welcome back to my channel. Today I am sharing another layout in my project tray series. Today we're focusing on all things music and the music note papers and chipboards that I had pulled out from another tray that we had done here just a couple layouts back. I am documenting two photos of my son and his girlfriend at a recent chorus concert. He was so proud of himself. This was his first district county chorus that he was participating in, and he was just thrilled. So I'm documenting that, and we're going to create a 12 by 12 layout using cut files and a little bit of mixed media and a whole lot of embellishing. So the cut file that I used previously that had the cassette tapes on it, these music notes are from those same from that same cut file. But I detached it basically and just used the music note parts. And whenever I did that, I did an outline or an offset. I did an offset, and I did the background white and the music notes black, keeping the traditional black music notes. But what I'm going to do is throw in just a little bit of mixed media on the background. But before I do that, I do assemble all of my layers for my cut files together, just so that I don't lose any pieces, and then I could start moving them around as one. I'm trying to get my layout figured out. I'm going to kind of work at an angle, but I do want to create this small cluster down here on the bottom with a couple music notes, just to add a little bit something. And this is kind of what it's going to look like in the very end. We're going to do some diagonals, and that's kind of the gist of it. But before I go any further and get really overworking myself into what I'm going to lay out and how I'm going to do it, I'm going to go ahead and do the mixed media of this and get some gesso on my paper. Because at this point I wasn't sure how much mixed media I was doing, I gessoed the entire 12 by 12 sheet. And I am using clear gesso on this one. They do make clear, they do make white, and they also make black. I primarily work with white. However, sometimes like this, I want to use clear because I still want the music notes to show through my mixed media. Now, while that is drying, because I didn't at this point have my heat tool out, I have to unpack that out of my moving box, which I do in the midst of all of this because I do pull it out. I go through my leftover tray and I pull out everything from this collection of the little bits and pieces that are left over from previous project trays, trying to find a way to use this up. And I'm going to do that through making some layers for my photos. I want to back my photos up just to give them a little bit of a border, but instead of using one color and larger pieces, I'm focusing on using some of my smaller scraps to get them used up, and we're just going to layer them like I'm doing here, blue on the top, the black piece on the bottom, and then I'm just going to staple them together, and that's what I'm going to use for my layers. And I love how this works, and this is one great way to use up all of those extra little bits from collections that you're not quite sure what to do with because they're just scrap pieces. So this one here, I'm going to do the same thing. I do trim this one down a little bit. I kind of got a little too big, and some pieces were not cut straight, but then that uses up a couple scrap pieces, and away we go. So for the mixed media, I have 3 shimmers pulled out. I will link them down below. There are 2 colorings and 1 inklings. The pink colorings, I do end up switching out partway through because colorings, the shimmers colorings is known to have the least amount of shimmer in it, and I wanted something with a little bit more, so I went actually back in and pulled out a light pink that was very similar inklings, just to give it that little bit more of a pop. But up at the top there, I have 3 colors that I'm using. I do spray some water in them. They do take the water to activate them. Otherwise, they are paint cakes, similar like a hard paint that takes the water to activate them. And all I'm going to do is work around my page where my music notes are, where my photos are. I'm giving it a little bit of a backing of color. I'm not going overboard. I'm not going crazy. This was where I picked a different color at, but I am just going through and adding just the slightest amount of color just to give it something. It doesn't take away from the pattern paper in the background, and this is one of those ways where for me, I have a very hard time using pattern paper for a background. I am a primarily white background type of scrapbooker. But I like to use some of the pattern paper sometimes like this because I feel that it's needed for what I want in my composition. But this helps kind of dull all of that chaos, I guess you could say. I feel that the backgrounds are very chaotic whenever I use the pattern paper, and I feel that this kind of helps calm that down a bit because it just makes some solid blocks of color and kind of gives your place, kind of gives a place for your eye to rest, so to speak. So I did the light pink the whole way around on the outside, and then I'm just going to follow that up with the blue, working my way towards the center, and then the red in the very, very center because the red is what I want to be seen the least. The pink and the blue is what I want to really pop the most. So I am literally just slapping color on. I did dig my heat tool out. At this point, I am going to go over everything and speed this up super fast. This layout did take me quite some time, and I do heat the back too. Whenever I do this, it helps bend the paper backwards a little bit because it warps a lot whenever you do the mixed media. So now that everything is dry, just to add that one more layer of something, I go back in and add the tone on tone color for splotching, adding splatters, red over red, teal over teal, pink over pink. Just another one of those things that I like to do to add that little bit of depth. I heat it up again. I do not completely dry it, and that's because I'm going to take a paper towel and roll it over it just to help dull it back a bit. And then that's going to be it for the mixed media on this one. And I'm going to go ahead and putting my layout together. Now, as I do this, some of the music notes I do just stick straight down onto the background. Others I do pop up on foam adhesive. In the end, like I said, this is very, very layer heavy. There's a lot of dimension on this. Well, not layer heavy, a lot of dimension heavy, I should say, because a lot of things I end up popping up. But I love how that this turned out with all of the layered cut files and all of the chipboard that I used on it. So this is going to be about what it looks like, and I'm going to go ahead at this point and start putting everything down. I'm going to do just some foam circles and put these down. I do use this roll from Altenew. This foam adhesive is fantastic for working with mixed media. I find that it grabs a hold of mixed media very well. I have a tendency to use liquid glue with foam adhesive whenever I do this, but this Altenew is phenomenal, and I don't feel that I need quite as much liquid glue, so bonus there. This piece I am going to tuck part of it behind the bottom photo and the top note about on the top of his photo, and that was because there was a person's face that had this very weird expression on it that was right to the left of his head, and I wanted to cover up, and that was the way that I did it because I didn't want that to be a focal point on this layout. So I'm going to keep on going, adding single and double layers of the circle foam adhesive, and adding just little dabs of glue here and there, layering it up, tucking things behind photos, layering things over top of photos. I really tried not to overthink this part of the layout, and just really stick things where to stick things, and just keep moving on. I'm trying to get this series wrapped up for everyone, and I have a couple projects left. My hope was to have this done by the end of February and just make it a February not a challenge, but like a February project, so to speak, for this series. But it is going to extend into March a bit, just because there's a couple layouts that I still want to do, and that I have videos coming up for, just to wrap everything up to try to use up as much of this kit as possible, because this is one of my favorite kits in a very long time. And a series like this is a perfect way to use it up instead of it living to die in my stash to never be used again. Okay, so at this point, this is where all of my cut files and die cuts land, and this is at the point where I felt that it was just missing something. I felt that it needed something on the top and the bottom to kind of frame everything in. I thought the notes with the background and the die cut, or the cut file, was my eyes were moving all over the page. Like I felt like it needed some place to rest. And that is where I'm going to add this record paper, tear off a strip and add a strip at the bottom and the top. And I really feel like that this makes this layout come together. And I really overcomplicated this part, but I did it for a reason. And it was because I felt like I wanted one row of records to show, or at least try to get one row of records to show on the top and the bottom. And it wasn't working the way that I had it. So it makes it look like when I tried to glue this down that I really overcomplicated it by like the way that I was trying to line everything up. But I promise it worked out in the end. So I'm going to do the same thing for the top, tear a strip off, use my edge distressor, and then go ahead and glue that down too. Whenever you do this, it also helps your warped paper become less warped, if that makes sense. It helps flatten everything out a bit. And if I would have ran that through my sewing machine and stitched that edge along the top and the bottom over those two layers of paper, it probably would have flattened it out even more. So if you're struggling trying to keep mixed media layouts and things flattened, try running and just adding some machine stitching detail through it, and it probably will flatten it out. I find for myself that it helps. So that's another little tip for you. So at this point, I'm going through everything that I have left of this collection. I do have the little jar of the music notes there that I do want to use, that I'm trying to use up some of the bigger elements that I have left over in my box of stuff that I still want to use, that I still need to use. So I pulled out the large words from the Bella collection, and I am going to use that large smile. The keyboard finally makes it to a layout, and it is going to stay on this one. You don't really see it a whole lot in the end, but I felt that it worked as a place for this word you that I'm going to use for my title to sit on. So it will end up there, and it will be a ground for my word you. And I am going to use the you and me, and then smile. So you and me, smile. And then there's another piece that I'll add on there, you're my jam. It's kind of like this very awkward, long, giant title, and it's totally okay because it works. And then this cork piece, I almost forgot all about using that cork piece. So I made sure that I brought that back in and laid it down at the bottom of my layout to remind myself to use it. And it actually ended up living there. So these white tickets, love them, still have some of them left. I'm cutting them in half and using them on the left and right sides of my photo, such the left here, just to add a pop of white and bring white back to my spread. Because again, this is very color heavy on this corner. The right one I am going to use to hold my date stamp for this. But I do bring in some chipboard hearts. I will go ahead and adhere down this word smile. I do use glue on these. I know they are self-adhesive. However, mixed media, gotta use the glue. Once I did put that down though, I forgot about having these washi strips, and I wanted to use more of them because I've only used them just a few times throughout my spreads. So I am going to fussy cut the curved or the scalloped of those out. I just like doing that for this, and then I use it as a weight on the bottom underneath that photo. And then I am going to do the same thing up above the top of the other photo to bring it back in. But at this point, this is where I decided, you know what, this music note, that's where that's going to go. So I go ahead and glue that down. And then this other scalloped sticker is going to go right up here and sit on top of that, which you do see a little bit of, but not a whole lot. But the scallop just peeks out right above that banner, which says, let the good times roll. And then I'm going to go ahead and work on finalizing all of these little bits and pieces for the title and getting everything glued down now that I know where I want everything to go. So we'll get that glued down. We'll add the you plus me. We'll get all of that glued in. And then that music note sitting there, I will actually work that into this title, just so that it feels like it's a little bit more of a part of everything, and I will tuck it under that E whenever I glue that down. I will pop actually the stem of the note. I don't know if that's the right thing to say it, and then pop that up on foam adhesive, and then the base part of the circle part of the note will get glued directly down to the layout behind that letter E. So I do flick back through my little container here of die cuts. I feel like I have a lot of large die cuts left over, so not a whole lot made it on this. But this was where I found that You Are My Jam, and I stuck that in there. I do also come across, for the You Are My Jam, it actually had a piece on the right-hand side there. It was actually a large rectangle piece. I decided because that the right side of it showed, I did a banner on it to add a little something to it, and I like how that turned out. So that's another tip or trick too. You can use banner side or banner both, and it adds a little bit more. So I added at the bottom. I did find this word hug, and I added that. And then I found this banner that said My Gal, and I thought that it was perfect for the story that I was telling here. So I grabbed that. I did add a staple to the top of it just to add another thing of texture, and then I'm going to go ahead and pop that up on some foam and put that right down below that You Are My Jam piece that I added on there. And that was all of the die cut pieces that I added, and this is where I almost forgot about all of these music notes, and we're like, oh crap, I've added so many other things. It's already starting to get busy. Is it going to be too busy? But I do use everything. I do use that banner. I was worried about that banner, but that banner will live right there. And when I get the date on there at the very end, it looks so cute. So I'm going to go back and finish all of the chipboard pieces up, scatter them around the page. And I do use all of them. But I do add some pink on top of the black ones that way, or the pink on top of the black ones. That way it kind of breaks up that color and it doesn't blend too much together. And then I use the other ones around the page, one on that double note, one up at the top left there, another one on the top right here. And then as I'm coming down to the end, I don't believe I show it, but after I date stamp, I do add a couple little bit more embellishing items. A couple of the epoxy stickers had some music notes on it. I do add those. And for this one, I actually will add my journaling onto the back later on. But that's it, you guys. That is wrapped everything up. There will be another layout coming up later on this week. Thanks so much for stopping by today. If you're new to my channel, I invite you to hit that subscribe button and click the bell so that you're notified of all of the videos that I upload for this series. And until next time, thanks so much for stopping by, and I hope I've inspired you. Bye.